In the late 1980s, Batman was having a renaissance. The character's public image had been a campy protector in tights for years, but the publication of darker and more complex stories and the anticipation for the upcoming Batman movie gave the hero a huge surge in popularity. During the height of this Batmania, comic book writer Grant Morrison put something different to the page, with a hauntingly dark and disturbing story that took Batman from hero to myth, putting the character's nightmares on display and pushing the boundaries of what a superhero story could be. The comic shares a name with the video game it inspired: Batman: Arkham Asylum. Despite the heavy themes and confusing imagery, the story itself is fairly straightforward. Arkham Asylum for the criminally insane, where Batman's enemies are held, has been taken over by its inmates. The Joker demands that Batman enter the asylum alone. As Batman descends into the heart of Arkham, he confronts his typical villains, but each provides not just a physical test but a psychological trial, forcing the Dark Knight to confront his own personal demons and grapple with the madness of his environment. The tragic history of Arkham Asylum's founder, Amadeus Arkham, is woven throughout the story. Amadeus sought to create a sanctuary for the criminally insane, but instead became an inmate himself, losing his family and his sanity in the process. Arkham Asylum was not easy to create. Morrison intentionally spent nights without sleeping to get into the headspace of an insane place with insane characters. In the 80s, comics like Watchmen and The Dark Knight Returns valued heroes who put duty over their emotions and fought gritty, realistic battles. Morrison wanted to create something that was just as dark, but not at all realistic. The intention was to create something that was more like a piece of music or an experimental film than a typical adventure comic book. I wanted to approach Batman from the point of view of the dreamlike, emotional, and irrational hemisphere, as a response to the very literal, realistic treatment of superheroes which was in vogue at the time. The content certainly didn't pull any punches, as Morrison fit in every controversial subject he could think of. As groundbreaking as the writing was, Arkham Asylum is probably more known for its surreal, disturbing art style. For that, you can credit artist Dave McKean, the other half of what makes Arkham Asylum so legendary. He blended paintings, drawings, and photography to create a textured style that makes the most important elements almost jump off the page, immersing readers into the nightmare. Some of his illustrations of the Joker are honestly so unsettling that they're hard to look at. McKean's personal vision often clashed with Morrison's. While the writer wanted a more literal depiction of his script, the artist went for a dreamlike, hazy style. McKean depicts Batman as more of an abstract shadow, frequently a silhouette instead of a superhero in costume. He chose to minimize superhero imagery and even refused to include Robin, saying that he had already compromised his artistic integrity by drawing Batman.
I was hoping this book might be read by people who don't usually read comics. And I just don't believe in a man dressed up as a bat wandering around hitting people. I just don't, call me old-fashioned.
Morrison didn't appreciate how his artists seemed to ignore and subvert parts of his script. He later admitted he wished they had hired a graphic artist who would draw his script more literally. However, McKean's unconventional approach is part of what sets the story apart. It puts Arkham Asylum on a sort of mythic and dreamlike plane, heightening the sense of chaos and madness. If Arkham Asylum had looked like the average superhero comic, it might not have stood out from its peers. Even the lettering broke the mold. The book gave each main character a distinct style, like white text on black for Batman and chaotic red scribbles for the Joker. Arkham Asylum's distinctive approach asks a question: does Batman belong in the asylum? His violent brand of justice sometimes seems to qualify him for a spot with the other lunatics. The narrative explores this by having Batman face something uncomfortable about himself with each enemy he comes across. This story's version of Batman is weaker than most depictions of the character, partially because of the injuries he suffers, and partially because the asylum really is getting to him. The comic book's subtitle, A Serious House on Serious Earth, is taken from the poem Church Going by Philip Larkin, which explores how being in a church forces you to reflect with what you believe, and how it's done the same thing for the people who came there before you did. Arkham Asylum is Batman's serious house, where the darkness around him shows he's prone to the same madness that his enemies and Amadeus Arkham fall into. But he chooses to channel that madness into becoming a hero, rather than completely falling into it. Every page of Arkham Asylum is packed with symbolism to the point that it's almost impossible to follow it all. Moons, shadows, mirrors, towers, and mothers are all woven throughout the narrative repeatedly and represent various concepts from psychology, literature, and mythology. The complicated symbolism and confusing art style meant that most readers probably didn't pick up on everything Morrison was putting down. Before it was published, Arkham Asylum was reviewed by a number of professionals in the comic industry who allegedly thought the metaphors and psychological horror elements were not only pretentious, but hilarious, and laughed at the comic book. When Arkham Asylum was finally published in the winter of 1989, some critics agreed, calling the symbolism and art style excessive and too chaotic. But most readers didn't need to understand it all. The chaos is part of what made it so compelling.
But seeing as though the whole book is set in an asylum, it's the perfect coat hanger to just hang all this madness on. If there's an image in there that doesn't make sense, fine. Maybe it will resonate with somebody and they'll find a personal meaning for it.
The book shattered all sales records by selling over 500,000 copies, which is still the best-selling original graphic novel ever for DC. It certainly got a huge boost by being published only a few months after the Batman movie brought the hero back to the forefront of pop culture.
You wouldn't hit a guy with glasses on, would you? Huh?
Morrison and McKean went on to become some of the most influential and successful figures in comics. The book completely changed the conventions of superhero storytelling and heavily influenced future Batman stories, especially in their depictions of Arkham Asylum or the Joker. Most directly, the comic inspired Rocksteady's beloved Arkham Asylum video game. The game features the same premise. The Joker has taken over Arkham Asylum and Batman must restore order. It's adapted into a more traditional superhero story, but the unsettling atmosphere of the asylum, the psychological horror elements, and the playful taunts from the Joker owe a clear debt to Morrison and McKean's work. The game borrows the comic's themes of madness and isolation, making Arkham Asylum a character in and of itself. It even includes the comic's tragic backstory of Amadeus Arkham as a side plot, with players uncovering fragments of his story in hidden areas throughout the asylum.
I am the spirit of Amadeus Arkham. Through my actions, I have saved this cursed city, though my own curse is to forever remain in the shadows.
Scarecrow's fear toxin sequences come closest to recreating the trippy and nightmarish things Batman faces in the original story. Just like the comic, the game even has the recurring appearance of a ridiculously huge moon. Of course, the fact that it's a video game instead of an experimental comic means the presentation is far more straightforward. The surrealism is toned down, action and combat is integrated throughout, and Batman is more of a true superhero. The game lets the audience step into Batman's boots and grapple with the asylum's threats firsthand, instead of helplessly watching the nightmare unfold like in the comic book. Ideas for a live-action interpretation of Arkham Asylum have been floating around since as early as the 1990s, when Joel Schumacher was interested in making an Arkham Asylum film. More recently, Matt Reeves was planning an Arkham Asylum TV series as a follow-up to 2022's The Batman, but it was cancelled last year. If The Batman 2 wants to continue building a darker narrative for Robert Pattinson's Batman, exploring Arkham Asylum could be a compelling direction to take the story. Still, no adaptation will fully replicate the nightmarish, abstract, and disturbing experience that Morrison and McKean created with their short but wildly impactful comic book. If you like this video, subscribe and check out some of my other stuff.